Lifeboat Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hey everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you're on the lifeboat. People, I've been waiting on this one. This is going to be a fun show. First of all, it's the Beware the Ides of March, right? Today is the Ides of March. It is also, let me pull up so that I can see Niall as well here. There we go. It's also my good friend Niall's birthday. So a happy birthday to Niall. I should not be surprised you were born on the Ides of March. That seems somewhat appropriate. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to this. Obviously, for those of you who are regulars on the boat, you know that this got postponed at one point. And Niall will address that, but we're here. And yeah, I don't want to take up too much of this time because Niall and I usually get rolling and run out of it. Niall, how you doing, brother?
Okay, I'm great, Tommy. May I point one thing out? I just see you. I don't see a split screen. I don't see you and me. So is that?
If there's you should see a little blue button with a plus sign on it. If you hit that, you're going to probably see my face.
Okay, is that like a shield, a green shield?
No, it should be right. It should be like right on the top corner of the image you're seeing of yourself. For me, I see it in the top left corner. Okay. It's a little blue circle with a plus sign in it.
Okay, just let me figure that out.
Sure.
Stop video, choose video. Interesting. It just says mute, and then okay.
And while we're doing it, Arizona Raven, I just sent you 2 emails. Please read them. Sorry, but I saw her in the comment section, so I thought I would multitask. See that, people? That's a little multitasking. Any luck?
Okay. No, it's fine. It's just unexpected because the last time it just popped up. So I'm just looking at you, Mark, right now, and I'm looking at Tommy individually. So yeah, share screen. Let me just figure this out. Post disable. Oh, okay. Okay. Participants.
Well, people, the fun.
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
For some reason, I just can't seem to share the screen with you guys, which is annoying. But
well, the people are seeing you on the right and me on the left. So at least
yeah. Let me think. Is there some way I can sort this out?
I'd like to give a shout out to all of you that are joining us here. It looks like we've got pretty much the entire crowd, which honestly, I'm not surprised at. I would have been surprised had we not. This is definitely one that you all have reached out. So many of you have reached out to me in the past and asked for this show. This really is sort of one of those examples of the crew asking and receiving. This is one of those things that that we were really happy to oblige. Sometimes you ask for things that are a little bit more difficult, but this is going to be a good one. No luck, Niall. Oh, and now you're muted, Niall. Can't hear you, bud. We can't hear you. There you are.
Can you
now
hear me
I can
now?
hear you.
Okay,
There
okay.
we go.
All right. How do I full screen?
Seventh
No,
son.
full screen is it?
Yeah, seventh son. Appreciate you, and you're funny as always.
Okay, we might as well get going because I think.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll back up 2 seconds, and I will say once again, happy birthday, Niall.
Thank you.
If you want to tell us a little bit about, tell the crew, what has transpired, because there was a reason you didn't, make the last live feed, and we did have some people, sending out thoughts and prayers. So an update would be great on that.
Yes. Interesting story, Tommy. When I got the call that my mother was unwell, she was suffering severe pains in the chest, and she couldn't sleep, and she had trouble breathing, right? So she was taken into hospital, and I got the call from my sister. Said, "Niall, you have to get down here." So that was on the day or the morning I was meant to come on live. I wasn't particularly worried about my mother because she's extremely healthy. I knew that there was no underlying issues that she had to deal with. She never smoked, never drank, perfect weight. So I had a suspicion that her difficulties were, her cardiac difficulties were probably not dramatic. But as it turned out, I arrived at the hospital. It's just such a shame I can't see you guys, with the split screen. But I will continue to talk anyway. It's the only thing I can do because I can't figure out what else to do. When I arrived at the hospital, she was in her hospital bed, dressed in a hospital gown, and she was fully aware and she's fully awake. And she had gone through, by the time I arrived off the bus, my sister collected me. She was in hysteria because she says, I think Mom is dying. She says, I don't think she's dying. And, this is a segue into another aspect that we will discuss in a few minutes. But they've taken her down. They're going to have to do some kind of heart surgery. She's having a heart attack. She's serious cardiac arrest, and So we walked in, and of course, the family was starting to gather like vultures, as they usually do in circumstances like this, like in hysteria. And my sister was crying uncontrollably. For some reason, I was calm, Tommy. I was like, well, let's just talk to the doctors when she comes back up. So she came back up, and she was like sitting up in bed, and she was fine. And she brought myself and my sister. At this stage, my father had not arrived, but my sister and her husband were there. And my uncle had just arrived, but he wasn't in the room when the doctor said, he says, we have taken a chest X-ray. Your mother has a slight blockage to the secondary valve, which leads into the aorta valve.
Okay.
We can give her thinners to thin this out, but she will have severe chest pain and breathlessness from this day forward. Now, your mother is 82, but she's in extremely good health. So what we as a team would like to suggest is keyhole surgery. Okay. So the keyhole, I was fascinated with this. I said, yeah, I know, yeah. So we're not going to break open black breastplate, on your mother. We're not going to do that. That would be that would kill her.
Sure.
We don't do that for people over a certain age. But in your mother's case, she's very healthy. So we will go in between the fourth and fifth ribs with keyhole surgery, and we will dissolve the fatty tissue, which is leading to the aorta valve. So that will, it's not invasive. It will be painful. Normally, we don't do this. It's an exceptional medical procedure. It's successful, but the patient has to be in prime health for them to even consider it.
Be a candidate, yeah.
Yeah. So they went in between the fourth and fifth ribs, and they went in through keyhole, and they sliced open this very, very delicate area, and they took out the blockage, which is just basically fatty tissue.
Fat, yeah.
And they literally stapled it. They stapled it together, and they just withdrew the keyhole. Now this is very precise surgery. They had to bring in another guy. They had to bring in another. And of course, my sister was like, "Oh my God, this is going to cost a fortune." And the doctor actually made a joke of it. He said, "This is. Are you covered in health? Is your mother covered for health insurance?" Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure she'll be covered for this. And my sister, fortunately, is very wealthy, so she said, "Don't worry about that." And I said, "Exactly, don't worry about that." Says the guy who's totally broke. And and she started crying again. But what if this doesn't work? And it's just,
a lot of what ifs.
So she went down for 2 hours, and normally a heart surgery takes 8 hours. And at the end of it, she has bruising and a hole just under her breast, and she is fine. She is fine. She's actually coming home today. She's going to stay with my sister for a couple of days.
Thank God.
And so what I wanted to get to was the kind of segue into how sobriety can help is a calm mind. I think I said to Mark before the show, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing yours, blaming it on you, this kind of stuff.
Yes, I do.
Yes. So
Rudyard Kipling.
Yes. And then my father arrived in the middle of all this, with his girlfriend, and they were like acting all concerned. And of course, my sister confronted him and said, "You can't bring her in here," So there was a big scene at that hospital waiting room. There was a huge comeuppance, and there was people screaming at each other, and all this kind of stuff. Everyone was going hysterical, basically, except my mother and myself. And for some reason, I was extremely calm, and I was kind of like the mediator between all this madness. And I said, "Listen, it's going to be okay. Trust me, it's going to be okay." What the doctor and his procedural, he wouldn't suggest this procedure unless he was 100% confident that it's going to work. Because it's otherwise it would be a complete another. Lawsuit that would last for about 10 years.
Disaster.
Yeah. And he says, "It's going to work." He says, and my sister said, "Who's going to pay for this?" I said to my sister, "Jesus Christ, Elise, will you shut up? It doesn't matter who's going to pay for it." Well, but actually a nurse did come down with some paperwork. Says this may or not be covered by your health insurance, sign it. I said, "Denise, sign it." She did. So My mother is, she's fine. It was very dramatic. My father was, of course, made a dramatic entrance in a three-piece suit, acting like he was on a diplomatic mission, and so I had to take him aside into another room and tell him exactly what had gone down. And I was able to do so because my sister was a basket case at that stage. She was nearly taken down to surgery herself. And so and his girlfriend was hanging around the hospital doors, and so it was one of those very dramatic situations. But it was also a beautiful situation for me to be in, because I had the strength to actually handle it. Because when I was drinking, I would have been the last to show up. I would have been out of my head. I would have been screaming and shouting and arguing with the doctors and pushing people around. So I think it's a kind of a fable that will maybe resonate with some people on the boat. That it takes a long time to get there, but once you get there, you're there. You will be calm when everyone else around you is screaming their head off. And my mother is going to be great.
You know what, Nyla? It had to be, I don't know, October, but somebody had left a comment, and I had saved it. And it's one of those things that I pull out from time to time. But that was basically the comment. She was talking about how, her mom was at the end of her life, and it was a situation where there wasn't much hope. But she said, but, when I get up in the morning, she said, I look out and, the sun is shining. She said, and I'm able to cope with this, and I'm able to deal with this, and I'm able to handle this situation in a way that is just, she said, I'm so thankful that, I'm not what I was, because the person that, was an addict, this would have been crippling. This would have been something that just would have, and instead the whole family was looking to her. And it's a story that actually comes up here more often than not. We hear it a lot from people that, when this kind of thing happens, it really is almost becomes routine for the sober person. We just endured so much for so long that, when the peanut butter is hitting the fan, so to speak, we tend to be the calmest people in the room. It's not just an opinion at this point. There's empirical evidence all over the place just from people on the boat. We hear this so often. Was it odd talking to your dad sober?
It was odd talking to my dad sober, with him presuming that I would be drunk, or at least unable to express myself. I think he was shocked that I took him aside and treated him in a way that calmed him down, and also treated him in a way which was respectful to his girlfriend, who I actually went out and spoke to as well. I said, I don't think it's a good time for you to come into the hospital. If you don't mind, would you mind sitting here, in the waiting room? We will be out later on, So I found myself in this very diplomatic position, which I couldn't have imagined I would be in. And it certainly wasn't planned, but I just kind of fell into it. And once I was there, I was like completely and utterly capable. This is what I want to talk about, as we get further into the program. I was so capable, I didn't know what I was doing, I just knew that there was something driving me to make the right decisions at the right time for the right reasons.
You know why I would say that, right? Because you were a new creation.
Yeah. And there was somebody I'm so annoyed that I can't see the split screen, but that's fine. As long as
I appreciate your patience for that.
Yeah. But I think I was speaking to a member from the boat just before we went live, and he understands where I'm coming from. And I think the philosophy of my addiction can take years to analyze and counter-analyze, and until you were there, you won't know you're there. I'm not sure how it works with drug addiction, but with alcoholism, you spend so much time in your own head in a fantasy world that you're completely unreliable. It's the same with drug addiction, but maybe the mind works in certain different ways. You're more grounded in reality than an alcoholic would be. I'm not sure. But in my case, it takes years of actually trying to understand who you are, what you are, where you came from. Once you have that background of information, it's going to store it somewhere in the cerebral cortex, and it's just a miracle that it comes out, and you're able to express yourself in a way that people do not expect you to do, and you don't expect yourself to do. But that, in my case, I'm 7 years sober after 30 years of abuse. With lots of detrimental things left along the way, and lots of bridges burnt and stuff. When the crap hits the fan, I think a sober, clear mind is something that becomes natural to you. And I think you've alluded to this over the last couple of videos that you've done, Tommy. A sober, clear mind is not something you can put in a box and say, this is what you will become if you do X, Y, Z. Of course, putting down the drug, you have to put the drug down, but that is just the beginning.
That's base camp. Yeah, it's base camp. It's not the top of the mountain by any stretch. And I think, I think that there's a lot of cases in sobriety where people are misled to believe that if you do set down the bottle, or you can put away the bag of dope or whatever, that a switch gets thrown, and the next thing you know, you're that person. And I think that we try to guard ourselves here against telling people that, because it's when that, you go through, everybody, depending on what your drug of choice was, you're going to go through a period of time where you're just in a funk. But when that funk goes away and your brain is starting to fire on all cylinders, well, then you realize that, this isn't perfect. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of crap that goes involved in this. I'm sober now and it's difficult, but I don't know. I think that's part of the magic of sobriety, is that you get that second chance. It's a journey, there's no two ways about it. But yeah, we've always tried to stress that, that you look at the entire life thing as Everest. When you put down your addiction, you just got to base camp. At that point, the climb can start. But until you put down, your substance of abuse, there's no climbing happening. You just continue to fall on the first step again and again and again and again. But, and I love the way you put it, when you are there, you'll know you're there, and it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some really crappy days anyway. But in a perfect world, there's fewer of those. Right. The longer that you're, because, and what's unique, Niall, and I know you've probably told me this like 6 times, but this time it really struck me when you said it. Our sobriety time is almost we have almost the same story. It's just 2 different substances, because I had 30 years of abuse, and this June 26th will be, 27th was the sobriety date. 26th was the last day that I used, but this June 26th will be 7 years. So we're right around the same leg of the journey, so to speak,
which is very interesting, because the 7-year mark is also it happens to be a very pivotal moment in a lot of people's lives. It's the year when most people get divorced.
Yep.
For example, it's a strange time. It's like you make a decision, or a decision is made around the 7-year mark. There's something about the 7-year mark,
yep.
And you can actually look this up. There's something about the 7-year itch. You've heard about?
Yes, I remember that. Yep, I remember that film too.
That is mostly applied to marriage and stuff like that, but across the board. And I think that for the first time for me, I think that spirituality comes into it, because there is the hand of something else that is upon this. When you reach a certain level, I'm not saying that I've reached that level. I'm not preachy about this. I'm not even sure I'm there. but I can see these synchronicities starting to happen. You know, they're just little sparks in the brain, little moments of clarity, little moments of calmness, little moments where I say, well, I'll do this, I'll make that phone call, I'll eat that dinner, I'll go for that walk, I'll do this, and, you know, instead of sitting around going, oh, waiting for something to happen, you get these sparks of inspiration, you know. But that, you know, and the beauty of this show is that I can express that because it's a very drawn out process. The difficulty, I suppose, with the sobriety channel is you want an immediate fix, you know, because you don't want to say to people, listen, it's great to be sober, but guess what? It's going to take a long time before you're happy again, or you have to go through that's a downer, right? So your instinct is to kind of say, well, you know, do this, that, and the other, set yourself little targets, and well done, and that's great. But I suppose the big picture is, and that's probably, you know, where the conflict would lie, or not conflict, but the difference of opinion is that you have to offer people hope, but you actually have to make them realize that you have to own, not just own, but you have to re-experience your own past to even begin to imagine your own future, if that makes sense. You know,
absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a tightrope because, and you know, we're you know, from the very first day we beat the drum that you really do have to own your past. You know, it's something. But I think that there are a lot of people that get so wrapped up in it and get so preoccupied with it that what ends up happening is they can't get out of the guilt phase to the point where they can start the climb, so to speak. I think that, you know, you've heard all of the, you know more than I do. You've heard all of the, like, HALT, right? You know, if you're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, you're tired. How guilt is not in that one has just blown me away, because I think that more than any of the letters for the acronym HALT, guilt is the one that I think drives more people back. I think this is why so many people in recovery, you know, you walk in and you say, well, I'm trying to get sober. Well, tell me about your childhood. Because the first thing that they would like to do is push this onto somebody else if they can, right? If, you know what, it's your dad's fault. If dad didn't do this, this, and this, you know, or your uncle's fault or your mother's fault. But if they can get somebody to make the straw man in the situation, then the individual has the opportunity to go, well, it's not my fault. You know what I mean? And when they alleviate all of that guilt, I think that they do get some results with that. I think that they find some success, but I've watched so many times where the realization kicks in at year 7, you know, or year 10 or whatever, that, you know what, yeah, dad might have been a jerk, but I think this might have been my fault. And then when that guilt slams them all at once, you know, I think that leads to a lot of relapse. So we kind of walk a tightrope, because it is important that, you know, that you own your past, but if you live in it, you're screwed. I think it's one of the reasons that the 12-step program kind of, the structure that they have you bite off, you know, chunks of the past and sort of go through it in some kind of a structured way, so that you're not, you don't just sit and wallow, because I think that drives so many people back to their substance. It's a tough road.
It's a tough road, and also it's a great debating point, because you know, I think you can bring on any expert onto the show and they will have no idea really what is the, you know, correct way forward, be it a medical professional or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Yeah, I think, you know, the guys, I have to accede the fact that the Bill and Bob in 1939, you know, a Wall Street broker and a doctor kind of said to themselves, we can't stop drinking. We can't stop drinking. We have to rely on something else. We just get together and write this manuscript, you know. I think there's a lot more truth to that than has been fully understood. That 12-step program, which was originated in 1939, sounds very out of date now, and you know, even the language is very, you know, out of date. But the the genuine sense that you have to, the fifth step, for example, is very clumsily worded, that you have to just admit every bad thing you've done in your life and to another person, another addict. And once you've done that, you'll be alleviated from your guilt and your fear and your remorse. But that doesn't work. It really doesn't work that way. You know, most, you know, if you admit something, you can only admit something to yourself or to God or to some kind of spiritual entity. Most of the time you're sitting across the table from somebody and you're saying, listen, I did this in my life. I'm so ashamed of this. I let my mother down, my father down. I walked out on my kids. I did this. And there's, you know, some kind of absolvement there. But there's a kind of a cognitive dissonance there. It doesn't work as simply as that.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, you actually have to own that yourself. You can't just express that to somebody else. So I think what the guys in AA got right, they also got a few things wrong. It's not their fault. It was a very unique approach. But, you know, when it comes to the fifth step stuff, it never worked for me because I don't want to tell this guy about my deepest secrets. I don't even know him. You know, why should I, you know?
Not to mention that it would take 2.5 years.
Yeah.
The amount of time it would take to really spill out all of those sins. I think now what they really got right was the fact that there is power when there's two people that share the affliction. You know, when if you try to sit down and have this conversation and you know, work through anything with someone, and they can have 46 letters after their name, but you cannot make someone who is not an addict understand the reasons that we do the stupid things that we do while we're in active addiction. And you could honestly spend your entire life, no matter how articulate you are, no matter how educated you are, trying to make someone understand the not understandable. You know, it gets right back to that, who in their right mind. I love that statement because obviously nobody in their right mind. You know that what you're doing is killing you, and you get up and you continue to do it. And the nice thing about the lifeboat and programs and groups like this is you don't have to spend the first 45 minutes of every single conversation trying to make somebody understand why you do the things that you do while you're in active addiction, because they already understand.
Yes.
So you can sort of, and I think that's really the takeaway for me for the 12 steps. And I've said it, you know, so many times on the show here in the US, if you get in trouble in any way, shape, or form, the court says, well, you're going to do 30 AA meetings in the first 30 days that you're out, and you've got a room full of people. It used to be filled with people who had such a desire to get clean that they were coming down there and taking their time to actually try to find an answer to a problem that for a lot of people, there was no answer. Now what you do is you walk into a room and half of them are drunk and they just want that guy to sign the piece of paper so that the judge doesn't throw them back in jail for missing the meeting. And they watered it down to the point, you know, that it lost a lot of the magic, I think.
And it lost a lot of vitality.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you know, sobriety is a. I think if you know, it comes down to also, Tommy. It comes down to morality to some extent. If you're a moral person, you tend to suffer for your past digressions more so than the average person. You know, you suffer more guilt and you suffer more remorse, and you suffer a lot more pain. But it's kind of worth it because it's very cathartic, because it's you know, I read a lot, so I like to read about history, but also about psychology and how the human mind works, and how especially the human mind can be manipulated through addictive substances, and where that leaves you, you know, spiritually speaking. So I think it's a lifelong journey. I think there's a lot of hope and a lot of there's something very unique about addicts. You know, we've talked about this before. And in your last 2 or 3 shows, there's a number of things you brought up about the family, about trying to relate your sobriety to your family and how they treat you and how you should kind of walk on eggshells or not walk on eggshells, and how the reason I brought up my mother's heart situation at the beginning is a perfect analogy for how that works. There is no explanation, but an addict will be the most productive person on the planet, bar none. When push comes to shove, when you reach that stage where a decision has to be made, you will make it. You will be absolutely calm, instinctively know the right thing to do from a spiritual, moral, and ethical standpoint. Now, that sounds like a lot of big words and high and mighty stuff, but it's not. It's very simple. It's very simple, but it takes time to get there. But that's just my opinion,
You know what? I think that opinion is shared by a lot of people, and I think if people look at this logically, it's not really a far out concept if you think about it. Like I think I said this on one of the shows last week. The average person learns more from mistakes than they learn from anything else. And if you're air quotes normal, right? If you're somebody that hasn't been down the addiction road, the number of mistakes that you're going to, really epic, big screw ups in your life where, the peanut butter's hitting the fan, there might be a couple of dozen of them. The addict does a couple of dozen a day, and in some cases for 3 decades. And you find yourself in situations constantly that were just, you spend 30 years in the most stressful life that you could possibly imagine. And when you remove all of that, and then all of a sudden you have a clear mind, when the normal day-to-day stresses that life throws at people comes up, the people that haven't really spent a lot of time in stress tend to melt down. And a sober addict has spent so much time in stress that they're like, well, this is stress? You call this stress? This is just normal day-to-day life. This is someone that has a health trouble.
Yeah, it's like, and that's what I mean by, acknowledging your past and suffering through it and coming out of it. Because, addicts will have an insight on life once you have done that no other normal person will have, and it's very hard to explain, I wouldn't be the type of person who would come on a channel like this and say, you have to do X, Y, Z and you'll be fine. But I would tell them, do X, Y, Z to start, and then we'll see where we go, and people will pick up on vibes. They'll pick up on certain, the fact that I'm on the show again, you asked me back on, is one of those small little, synchronicities or small little moments in time that, require a further viewing or a further discussion. But you're absolutely right, Tom. I think I can only speak for myself when it comes to alcoholism. Alcoholism, what it does, I'm not sure how much time we have left, about 20 minutes, but with an interesting segue, how alcohol affects the brain. For alcoholics, because alcohol is so readily available, it's an instant kind of fix. We touched on this before. So alcoholics want to be taken out of their situation and numbed, or else introduced into a fantasy world. I think I talked about this on my first video, the fantasist idea, being removed from your situation, just get drunk and just imagine if I was the perfect father. Yeah, when I have a few drinks, I am the perfect father. If I'm listening to a big piece of music, I'm the perfect father. It's like a movie. You just put yourself in that situation, and when you run out of booze, you go out and buy some more. For a drug addict, you have to be based in reality to some extent, in that every day is like, as you said before in some of your other videos, waiting in parking lots, hanging around, sweating, shaking, waiting for the guy to turn up, So
Yeah.
there isn't much room for fantasy and all of that. So drug addiction, from that point of view, is based in stark reality to some respects until you get that hit, and then you have a few hours
Right.
of oblivion, and then it's just waiting for the next fix. Whereas with alcoholics,
It's
especially
on every street corner.
especially the way I drank, was pretty much it. I was just topping up all the time, so I would wake up in the morning, I'd still be drunk, and I would go to the liquor store and I'd just buy a few more, and just so I was topping up. So I was always in this fantasy world, of my own creation. Um, so I think that is probably one distinction between alcoholism and drug addiction, which is important maybe to define, because I think drug addicts tend not to lose touch with reality to the extent that alcoholics do. In fact, it's the opposite. Drug addicts are based in reality. Their reality is the hell of the grey sky, the tall buildings, the waiting, to score, hanging around, walking up and down the street, pacing around the apartment. That's very much based in reality, whereas the alcoholic can just top up anytime. So yeah, that's another aspect,
No, and I think that there's definitely something to that. And again, this is something that you try to, it's the same situation where who in their right mind, when you try to explain to somebody the hell of, especially, my particular affliction, you're sticking a needle in your arm, you're doing just things that don't make any sense. And as you start talking about the stories, you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to be $600 or $700 that you're going to put in your arm before the sun goes down. And in the beginning you got money, and this is just but at the end of it, it's crime, and it's I remember having conversations with addicts where I said, I wish I was an alcoholic. I really do. I mean, at that point in my life, I thought they got it made. $4 or $5, and it's, they're not waiting on somebody who literally owns your life, but the stark reality, you're right. They live in a world that you're not getting away from reality at any point. The reality is you're either sick or you're well. And there's nothing outside of that. If you're not well, it's the things that you're going to do to get well. That reality is an absolute day-to-day thing. I think the one area where you and I were not 100% in sync, on a pretty regular basis, I use the term new creation, and I know that I wouldn't say you take umbrage, but you have kind of a different philosophy on that than I do. And I'll preface this by saying the comment that you made about facing your demons and then walking with them for the rest of your life is in the top 2 or 3 things that I think anyone has ever said on the lifeboat, myself included. I think the day that I read that comment, that has stuck with me in a way that really, it's something that I reflect on. I can meditate literally and think about that comment. But I do stick to the new creation thing as much as there's no getting away from the past. I do believe that in my situation, specifically, I really believe that the difference between me and the previous version of myself is so stark that I don't know. I very much feel like a new creation. Not something that you subscribe to at the same level, though.
No, and I'll be honest with you about that, and
Yeah.
I don't. I do take umbrage. Umbrage is a good word, or I don't take offense with it, or I just don't believe it. The idea of becoming a new person, you don't. You might evolve into a new person, but you don't become a new person. So you don't change who you are. You just slightly evolve into a version of yourself that you don't recognize. But it's, I think, it wouldn't be a disagreement that you and I have so much as a kind of, I'm tired of hearing the happy clappy kind of, solutions. Oh, you're doing great, don't worry, keep going and everything's going to be great. I kind of tend to shy away from those kind of approaches when it comes to sobriety, because I feel that they're more destructive than they are useful. Because even though they might be help somebody over in the short term, in the long term, really what you have to do is suffer through what you need to suffer through, to get to where you need to go. So the new creation idea is a philosophical concept, which is not something that I personally would agree with. I would not, tell somebody not to promote that, but I feel that it can be a little bit misleading in some ways, in that, you're not going to become this born again kind of person who, can leave all your baggage behind. I think that's a kind of a false dichotomy, but that's just the way I approach it. I think, with all due respect, I think that's what you meant.
The beauty of you, Niall, is that you and I can disagree on something 180 degrees. I always come away from the discussion feeling like I'm a better person because of it, and I think that the open sharing of other opposite ideas, in theory, used to be a pretty beautiful thing, and it doesn't exist very often anymore. I think it does on the boat, which is kind of cool. And I understand what you're saying, and there are aspects that are rock solid, because regardless of whether you're a new creation or not, there is no denying the things that you've done in the past. And I do agree with you that if you don't come to grips with them, then you're never going to get anywhere. You can't wake up the day that you set down the bottle or the needle and say, well, today I'm a new creation and everything is perfect. But I believe that the process leads to that. And I think that, and in a lot of ways, I think we're probably on the same page. Some of it may be semantics, but the key to, in my opinion, like when I sat down, I had a guy that led me through the process, which I think was, without him right now, I'm putting a needle in my arm and we're not having this conversation. That's just the way it is. And he was a lifer in prison, but we did a version of the fifth step that was just different. What he said was, if you had to just be brutally honest and list every single attribute and not what you think you are, if your best friend knew that you weren't going to read this piece of paper, what would he describe as the things that make you what you are? And, for me, that was, I was a thief. I was a liar. And it was funny because I brought the page back and he's like, what is this? I was like, well, you asked me to. And he's like, man, this is going to take you days. Like, if you brought this back in 5 minutes, you're BSing yourself and me, get back there. And by the time I was done with it, it was a very, very uncomfortable process. And it was an uncomfortable process with a heroin dealer 2 doors down, 6 feet away from where I was standing, which was, god awful. But, I then, spent a day putting down what I wanted that new creation to be. And for me, you've probably heard me use the term page 2 or page 3, Tommy, because as I was working through this book, like page 2 was what I was. And if you knew me then, the page 2 guy, I was brutally honest with what I put down there. I was and I've said it before, I was a reprehensible human being, and I think that, people always say, well, obviously the good parts of you were in there or you wouldn't be where you are today. If they were there, Niall, they were so far down. You know what I mean? I was one of those guys that, I would have drop kicked a baby through the uprights to get a gram of heroin. You know what I mean? I would have punched a nun in the face to get it, because that's just who I had become. And when I look back on that, I honestly can't come to grips that that's me. Now, it's not to say that I didn't own it, because I did, and I continue to. But these days, I find that I spend a lot less time wrestling with the things that I've done in the past, and for me, part of that is the concept that I really have become something different. For me, I really feel as if there was heroin was at the helm, so to speak.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like really, and I know that may sound almost like a cop out, but I wasn't making those decisions.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Tommy, that way you described heroin addiction as opposed to alcoholism, there is a distinction there. Heroin addiction will lead you to do awful things, because it takes a huge amount of money to feed that addiction.
Yeah.
And you become, and eventually nearly all addicts end up incarcerated for one reason or another. Alcoholics, that sense of selling your grandmother, or robbing someone on the street or whatever, it isn't as acute as it is with a heroin addict, simply because it requires a lot more money to get high than it does to get drunk.
Yeah.
So what your cellmate said to you, or the guy in prison, was very profound. But I also I remember reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, who discovered Islam inside, when he was in prison, and he came out and he got overwhelmed with the idea of Islam, to the extent that it almost enveloped him in a way he didn't understand. So he became too kind of integrated into a philosophy that he learned in prison, and it ultimately led to his death, which is the history of Malcolm X. That can happen to addicts as well. They can swap an addiction for a philosophy, or a way of life, or a cult. I would describe many therapy groups as cults. They have a leader and they have a structure, and they tell you what to do, and you say, "This is great, I feel so much better." So my philosophy is much more that you have to kind of go through what you need to go through to come out the other end. There are distinctions between strong heroin addiction and alcoholism, obviously, when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to imprisonment and being arrested and having to go through the horror of that. But also, Tommy, there's a trauma involved in that can't be denied. It can't be just said, well, that's, I'm a new guy now, and that's me, that doesn't exist anymore, and I'm this new guy. But that's still there in some respects, I would argue. That's still.
Oh, no question. I can't argue that point.
Yeah, I'm very Freudian and kind of Jungian when it comes to these aspects. They will haunt you in dreams, or like, that's what I meant when I said to you that your demons walk with you. You have to know where your demons are, and they walk beside you. And at times you actually have to make friends with you. I don't mean shake hands and make friends. You have to know they're there, because they're part of who you are. So I subscribe to the theory that you don't become a new creation, you become the same person with better knowledge, or with a wider view of yourself in the world. So I think that between you and me, I think that's the only discrepancy that we have.
Yeah, and I think some of it probably comes back to verbiage too, because I definitely would never argue the key to this entire thing for me is coming to grips. It's the reason that I said the comment that you made about walking with your demons is why it affected me the way that it did. And it wasn't just hey, that's a cool thing. I mean, I have spent hours of my life sort of I don't know if meditating is I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and it's more than coming to grips with the things that you've done in your past. It's becoming comfortable with and I don't mean approving of it, I mean not trying to put it away in some closet in the brain that you're never going to touch or look out ever again. And I think that that's a philosophy of some people in recovery, is that, you know, you take a look, like the fifth step, you know, you take a look at what you did, you admit it to somebody, and then you never have to bring it up or think about it ever again. And I think anything you put into a closet in the recess of your brain is going to come back with a baseball bat at some point. It's not going to be one of those things that occasionally, you know, walks with you like a demon. When it comes back, it's going to get you. You know, if you don't not only come to grips, but, you know, come to accept the, you know, those parts of you. And I think that maybe that's the semantic part of it, is that I think that's probably what creates the new creation, is when you have come to, you know, when you have come to accept the things that you've done, not necessarily in a way like, well, that was cool, right? Because it's never going to be that. But when you realize that the previous version of yourself would punch a nun in the face, like when I really got when I came to the realization of who that other person was, I think that was the birth of the new me, if that makes any sense.
Of course it does. And I'll just, you know, I know we're nearly at the top of the hour, but I will just say that this is a fascinating conversation. It's only part one of about, you know, part 15 of many different shows that we will do. It's you know, I suppose I'm a person who opens the closet and lets the ghosts out, as opposed to close the closet. And that's, yeah, as you said, it's semantics, and it's just a slightly different way of looking at things, but we all have the same purpose in mind, and that is, it's much better being sober, no matter how you work it out, no matter how many ways you can analyze these things. Being sober is much better than being drunk or being high.
No question. Or yeah. And, you know, I can truthfully say this with about as much conviction as I can say anything on the boat. I have never had one of these conversations with you that I didn't feel like I was in a better shape after the conversation. These are, you know, one of the things, and you nailed it in the beginning. You know, if there is a decent amount of reality that sometimes can be overbearing, that's part of sobriety. But when you can, if you come and try to do that as one person and try to explain that, you're welcome to the Doom Show. I'm Captain Tommy. But when you got a couple of people that can sit and talk about it, the reason that Mark and I have asked you if you were willing to do this on more of a like a continuing basis. That's why I was clapping when you said this is one of 15. You all did hear him say that, right? Okay, so if by some chance he's not back next week, you'll know it's his fault, not ours, because we very much would like to keep this rolling, Niall. We really would. I think that that the best of the lifeboat is when a couple of recovering addicts can have a conversation like this. I really believe that more wholeheartedly than anything. I think everybody learns from things like this.
Let me jump in here real quick.
Please do.
Yeah. I think a good suggestion for everybody, if you guys have a topic or just anything that you guys want to talk about, and these guys might be able to, you know, go back and forth a little bit on, please send that to us. I'm sure they're both willing to do that because it's a respectful thing, you know, and this is good, productive conversation. It really is.
More than willing.
Okay.
More than.
Amen.
Cool.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean,
I love this, Niall. I
yeah.
love this. I really do.
I really think.
In fact, you know, I might be a pain in the ass if somebody actually takes me up on that. You know.
You know what?
Yeah, I do think that this is a great thing for people to to see people can have respectful conversation, and even at the end of it, you might not completely agree with one another. It's okay. It really is okay. And I do think that everybody on all ends comes out smarter. Honestly, you're going to hear things.
I know I do.
Yeah, and I think we become. I don't know. I think it even opens our minds a little bit more to something that we might not have thought of. I really think that that's a good point to make there. So I just wanted to say that, guys. So if you guys got questions, please send it to us.
And just before we end, I just want to say to both of you and to everybody who's on the lifeboat tonight that this channel, I've said it before, I'm not sure whether I said it on air, but I certainly said it in chat, is unique. It's unique because of what you are trying to accomplish. You're not a sobriety channel per se. What you're trying to do is to get people sober through experience, love, acceptance, and conversation, which is very unique. You will not find that. You can look on any other sobriety channel on earth, and I've done it, believe me. You get a lot of pontification and
Preaching.
preaching and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is a very unique format, and I'm very happy to be part of it. And thank you so much for having me on. And hopefully the next time I'm on, I'll sort out this.
Right. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to do that.
We'll get that figured out, brother. I promise.
And I can truthfully say that I have more fun in this format than I have doing anything on the boat. This is great. And Niall, I can't thank you enough. That's from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure.
I'm very much looking forward to the next one because I have a feeling we probably could have gone 5 hours. So there's plenty to come, people. Stay tuned. We're going to be back tomorrow night, same bad time, same bad channel. You know the drill. Between now and then, reach out and try to save somebody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
God bless you all. Thank you. Have a great night. No cat in the basket. She's gone tonight. She's been busy all day. No, that was all.